All right, so this is the reducing fractions review. We're going to be taking fractions down to their the simplest expression of those fractions, the most basic versions of them. The first thing we're going to ask ourselves when we reduce is, does the numerator divide evenly into the denominator? And you really hope for those kinds of fractions because it makes for some really easy reducing. If we look at a fraction like 7/28, we ask ourselves, does the numerator go in evenly into the denominator? The answer is yes, it does, and so we divide by that numerator. In this case, it's 7, and we get 1/4. 7 divided by 7 is 1. 28 divided by 7 is 4. Other problems that look like that, we could have 3/9, let's say. And we ask ourselves, does the numerator divide evenly into the denominator? And the answer is yes. So we divide by that numerator. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 9 divided by 3 is 3, 1/3. Last example, we could have 6/18. Does the numerator go into the denominator evenly? Yes, so we divide by that numerator. 6 divided by 6 is 1, 18 divided by 6 is 3. All right. So what happens if your numerator does not go in evenly to the denominator? Now then we can take one of two paths. The first thing is we can think about the greatest common factor between the numerator and the denominator. Or if they're even, we can make it a little bit easier by chopping them in half and then asking ourselves what the greatest common factor is. So if we look at an example like 8/12, we can find the greatest common factor by thinking of the factor list for these numbers. And then asking ourselves, all right, well, what's the biggest that they have in common? In this case, it's 4. So 4 is the greatest common factor. All right, so we're going to divide by 4 from the numerator and the denominator, and we're going to get 2/3. So that's one possible route. Now, if you're not a huge fan of finding the greatest common factor, and we had, what was our problem? We had 8/12. You can see that they're both even, and one thing we can do to make this a little bit easier is we can chop them in half. So we get 4/6. Now 4/6 is a little bit easier to find the greatest common factor. Well, you can also see that they're even again, so we could even chop them in half again and get down to 2/3, which is the lowest terms. But let's say that we chop 8/12 in half, we get 4/6, and we realize the greatest common factor then is 2, and we get 2/3. All right. How about a problem like 6/8? So we ask ourselves, does the numerator go into the denominator? The answer is no. Are they both even? The answer is yes, and so we chop them in half, and hey, look at that. That ends up in lowest terms. Now, how do we know it's in lowest terms? Because we ask ourselves this question. Is there a number other than 1 that divides into both evenly? So is there something other than 1 that divides into both 3 and 4? And the answer is no. All right? So, well, what happens if the numerator doesn't go into the denominator and neither of them are even, or one of them isn't even, say in 9/15? Then we're stuck finding the greatest common factor. There's no way around it. So we're looking for the biggest number that goes into both 9 and 15 evenly. And the way that we do that is we find all the factors of 9, and we get all the factors of 15, and we find the one that is the biggest that they have in common, the greatest common factor. In this case, it's 3. And we divide both the numerator and the denominator by that, and we get 3/5. We ask ourselves this question, is there a number other than 1 that divides into both evenly? The answer is no, and so we are in lowest terms. That is reducing fractions.